Sky Squad, we are back in the building and we have got to recap part two of the interview with Carlos King and Mariah Huck, creator of Married to Medicine. Tap in if you happen to catch part two in the chatterization. Let us know so we can get into this discussion. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell button, and hit the like button if you like reality TV related content. Help us keep this engagement going. All right, so it's time for us to have, the recap, the after party, if you will, with your resident Sherlock homeboy. And we got to get into some things. And you know what's funny to me is the timing of this interview is impeccable. When you really think about what's actually happening with regards to the most recent episode of Married to Medicine. If you happen to miss the review for the episode that aired on Sunday night, be sure to go back in and watch this video right after you watch this. Because I mean, we had a lot to discuss. And there was no beating around the bush in that video. And I kind of feel like this following suit is going to be an interesting discussion because we pick up where we left off from last interview with the conversation really being about Dr. Jackie and whether or not she is the true villain of Married to Medicine. Now, I'm just going to give you guys some thoughts overall. There may be several villains, okay? Or maybe everyone is a hero and maybe everyone is also a villain. I find that in the realm of storytelling that I'm currently engaged in with, writing, finishing the edits for the book, but also getting into screenwriting is that characters in and of themselves, when they are not always good and not always bad, are much more interesting. And so we pick up the conversation with Dr. Jackie potentially being the villain of Married to Medicine and Mariah agreeing, right? And Mariah asked this question: are they going to actually show Dr. Jackie grasping with the ramifications of that 2020 statement that she made on Dr. Heavenly's YouTube page that enraged a lot of people this past December, right? So the question becomes, are they going to really show her and all that she's going through with her reputation? Because she says that's what people need to see. She also says that the first time Dr. Jackie stepped into her home, that she didn't even speak to her. Now, Mariah also alleges that essentially she is the person who put Dr. Jackie on a pedestal, and that at some point Dr. Jackie was basically like, well, I didn't ask you to put me on any pedestal. And again, I think it goes towards our discussion that we had yesterday, wherein I talked about Dr. Jackie being put on a pedestal, but it not necessarily maybe being Dr. Jackie who put herself there. Maybe it was the cast, maybe it has been production, and maybe it has been the network that has thus far seemed to protect her, as Mariah seems to suggest, in a way that makes her feel untouchable. Mariah talked about how her mom once told her how some older women don't really respect successful younger women, or maybe younger women in general. And I noticed a lot of discourse in yesterday's comments about, Sweet Tea should have more respect for her elders and whatnot. And what I have to say about that is this: in general, that is my belief that we have respect for our elders. But in that same vein, shouldn't the elders also lead by example with that same level of respect? And then does that dynamic change once you become coworkers? Because once we're on the same playing field as coworkers, then disrespect is going to most likely be met with equal disrespect. You can't disrespect someone and then dictate how they come back at you because you have seniority over them. Not everybody is going to adhere to the pecking order that the group has seemed to establish for Dr. Jackie. And that just is what it is. She too is human. And I think that is what is being missed here. And Mariah basically states that very eloquently in this interview. Now, that is not to say that Mariah is without fault or without human mess ups or things that have gone wrong as well. But I'm just putting it all into perspective because right now the conversation is about Dr. Jackie. So Mariah wants to know, well, why was she on Dr. Heavenly's YouTube page, even, having this conversation? She does say that her heart went out to Dr. Jackie because she knows that Dr. Jackie holds her reputation in high regard, but that she also does need to face the music, which is a sentiment that was echoed by Sweet Tea, in that you also can be put in the hot seat. Okay. Mariah felt like Dr. Jackie needed to fire her whole PR team after A, initially doubling down after her remarks from 2020 resurfaced, and then B, that it appeared as though she was reading from a teleprompter when she did give her full apology. And I kind of felt like it looked like she was reading something as well. I just kind of had to go with the idea that when somebody apologizes, I got to go ahead and let it go, because to hold on to it any longer, I just feel like it's damaging to me, right? But I'm not the people in question that were affected most by her statements. So I can't dictate who accepts that apology, when, where, or why, right? But I do agree with Mariah in that, well, I'm on the fence because Mariah felt like it seemed insincere, but I also think that for some people, you may want to have it written down because you just want to make sure that you don't say the wrong thing again, because it was going off the cuff that seemed to get her in that space in the first place. Okay. She does say that the apology was cringy, but these are the same things that she feels like she would tell Aiden if Aiden had messed up in a similar way. And she wonders why nobody around Dr. Jackie maybe sort of coached her on like just offering an authentic sounding apology from the heart. She does feel like Dr. Jackie is protected. Like she's like, well, what's going on with her marriage? And that is what a lot of people are saying. Dr. Alicia even alluded to potentially like, well, why didn't we just go to DR? I think on Watch What Happens Live, and a lot of people have been saying that. Well, they didn't have to go to Hilton Head. They could have gone to DR since Curtis spends so much time there. And the thing that Mariah was trying to get at is what's going on with Dr. Jackie's marriage now. The premise of the show, she says, is really how do these black men deal with these successful black doctors? Why? Well, part of the premise. She says, why hide it? Because if it was Toya, they wouldn't hide it. If it had been her, they wouldn't hide it. And she says, getting a closer look at the relationship between Curtis and Jackie would humanize Dr. Jackie. And I do agree. All right. So, when asked about her thoughts on Toya, these were very, very interesting to me. She thinks that Toya is at an impasse and she thinks that she needs something for her. Like, she's happy that Toya is doing the wine. She feels like Toya is the most real of all the ladies. She's the epitome of a doctor's wife. Everybody from like when she was trying to cast the show had been pointing her in the direction of Toya and Dr. Eugene. And she says you can love her or hate her for it, but I kind of agree with that. Carlos feels like Toya wants something else besides what her current reality is right now, but that they talk about her living her life for the cameras. Now, Mariah says something very interesting. This is where things get really interesting to me, because she says that going into season 2, she wanted to have everyone on the most favorite nations so that nobody from the network to production could ever divide the cast, meaning everyone would get paid the same as they continue to move forward, right? So she had a meeting, I guess, or wanted to have a meeting with all of the cast to have that discussion. She alleges that Toya went back, ran to the other producers, and told them what Mariah was trying to do. Now, to me, that is very that's egregious to me, because if you have somebody who is this is a point of contention behind the scenes for a lot of different casts, whether they ever mention it or not. This is right. And so if you have an agreement where everybody is on the same level playing field, it it makes things better because no one is getting paid more or less, right? But with Toya running back and telling that, then that also makes it seem as though Mariah is a problem. Okay. She's going to be causing a problem for what they could be potentially trying to do. And it also sabotages what the ladies could be potentially doing together. And I'm like, why would Toya do that? It makes no sense to me. And this is one of those situations where I feel like I never understand when people fight against their own best self-interest in the spirit of maybe trying to perhaps get on production's good side. I don't really know what the purpose in that would be, because it would be better to go to them as a united front. We talk about the cast from Friends doing this. Why would you not want to do that? It feels like a crabs in a bucket type of mentality. And I just didn't that just didn't sound too good to me. However, down the line though, she does talk about how Toya was the person who told her to go get the hair test after Quad had made those white powder accusations about Mariah at that reunion. Okay. She does not talk to any of the cast, but she did text Quad because she had lost a family member. She felt like that was the right thing to do. And Carlos also tells us that Nene, Kim, and Sheree did, or I guess maybe went to, or allegedly went to the production company or the network to negotiate a most favored nations clause as well during their season 2, similarly to what Mariah was trying to do. Thoughts on Sweet Tea. All right. Mariah feels like Heavenly is going way too hard on her marriage. And Mariah says something interesting. She says, if Sweet Tea can have a baby or not, Dr. Heavenly never went that hard on Quad, who didn't want to have a baby with Dr. G. With Dr. G. So why is she going so hard on whether or not this girl can have a baby or not when she didn't have that energy towards Quad? She, when asked if she thinks that there may be hazing Sweet Tea, she says that, well, she would think it was hazing if she thought Sweet Tea was going to make the line. So what she means by that is, like, you would only haze people who are going to be, you're going to be bringing into the fold, but it doesn't look to her like they have any plans to keep her in, because she also thinks that Dr. Heavenly is helping to shut Sweet Tea out of the group. She feels like you have to give people a chance. And because the first season of a reality TV show, you don't really know who you are on TV. And then Mariah goes so far as to say Dr. Heavenly doesn't have any room to speak on anybody's marriage, because she says no marriage is perfect. When asked if she still has the receipts, baby, she says she still has the receipts and the invoices, but she never wanted to put that out there because she didn't want the show to be about that, which I can respect ultimately, right? Thoughts on Phaedra joining Married to Medicine. She does not understand the correlation at all, okay? She feels like Phaedra maybe deserves a spinoff, kind of like Quad, because she has a big character. She's entertaining. And she feels honestly like Phaedra is there just to collect a coin, and it is very obvious. Carlos also agrees and said that they cast her and that the cast let her get by easily on things and it also feels like stunt casting. Carlos said that Phaedra did apparently switch her flight to not fly with Quad, and she knew Quad and didn't utter a word in defense of her during that dinner. That to me is where Phaedra would have been very useful on this show, is if she had been more of an advocate for Quad. Do you see the way in which Dr. Heavenly stood 10 toes down for Dr. Jackie and was like, I'm not going on this trip if Jackie's not going? Quad could have used Phaedra as an ally like that, because if Phaedra is really going to be of use to these ladies on this show, she could still go along and get along, but you can still also, unless somebody put the bug in her ear, you need to let Quad sink, or else it's your job. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I do get that she had tried to help Quad before. And I do get that Quad may not be as innocent in this situation, but it just seemed to me like she could have stepped up a little bit more. I don't know. All right. Mariah would also rather that Phaedra said, okay, well, you got to explain what happened to this old friend group on Real Housewives of Atlanta that led you to this point here. And when Carlos explained that Dr. Heavenly allegedly warned Phaedra that they wanted her to ask her questions about that time period, Phaedra, remember, allegedly went to the network and went ham about not wanting to rehash the past, and therefore that was shut down. Mariah says, why would Heavenly give Phaedra the heads up when they're not even friends like that? And that did make sense to me. Why would she give her the heads up? Because Mariah then says, do you think she would give Sweet Tea the heads up? I was like, well, now that's a good question. Very good question. And she says that speaks volumes. What would Mariah's dream cast be for Married to Medicine? She definitely says Toya. She says Buffy. She says, I think it was Janice was a doctor, right? Dr. Janice, maybe. And she says her antennas are up for Sweet Tea, but she doesn't, I guess, know enough about her. She's never actually heard Dr. Alicia say much of anything, but Mariah says that they likely casted Dr. Alicia because she's a younger version of Dr. Jackie, which I found interesting. And I still didn't quite understand the correlation. But Mariah says that she probably has another side to her that they're just not showing. She feels like it's time for some of the OGs to be removed. My only assumption could be that she could be talking about maybe Dr. Simone or Dr. Jackie. I'm not really sure because she did not say. But she does say that they've gotten complacent. I feel like Dr. Simone still gives us good TV. Her yelling to me, it will always be like one of my favorite things on television. I don't know why. It just sends me into hysterics every time it happens. And if you watch the show from the beginning, Dr. Simone gives some really, she gives. Dr. Simone has low key been a shade assassin from the beginning. Go back. If you don't believe me, watch episode 1 of season 2. They were giving it to her. Okay. Dr. Heavenly came on the scene and she was giving it to Dr. Jackie. She was giving it to Dr. Simone. Who else? Toya was giving it to her in that first episode. Baby, they were working Dr. Simone down. Okay. So, but Dr. Simone won't no punk. Okay. Like she was giving it, she was dishing it right back. But they was working her. Okay. They was working Miss Mama. Go back and watch season 2, episode 1. You will not be disappointed. You won't. I promise you. One of the most entertaining episodes. Go back and watch. Okay. Um, Mariah believes it would be a better show if the producers would just let the girls live instead of trying to maneuver the pieces around the chessboard and tell people who to be friends with and who to kick off the boat. Um, Mariah is ready to be back on television. You know, she would do an ensemble show, but is an ensemble show ready for her? She feels like her gift is bringing out the best of other people, but she lost herself in doing so. She does say that she has some things in the works, a talk show. She's in heavy negotiations for that, but it's not the reality TV Mariah that we all really want. It is more along the entrepreneurial route, which I think is always a good look. That's kind of, what we're talking about on my personal channel. I don't know if you guys are following that, but if you're not, please do so. We do get into a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors, discipline, that sort of thing. So it really resonates with me when she talks about those things because I'm so invested in that in this moment in my life. Um, so she does have the perfect cast for a show if Carlos wants to work for a show called Love and Medicine. And Carlos said Love and Medicine Atlanta. Hmm. Now, to me, that's a show I would love to see because it harkens back to what she talked about from the first part of the interview, where she told us that she was hoping to get one version of the show on TLC and she hoped to actually be on the one on Bravo. But TLC said, no, ma'am, Pam, unless you are here, we don't want it. Okay. But speaking of unless you hear, the question that Carlos and Mariah did still have is, why is Phaedra here, Ike? And I feel like we are all still scratching our heads, especially when we look to the fact that the tea is that Portia is returning to the Real Housewives of Atlanta along with Kenya allegedly. And the folks was in the chat last night talking about bring Phaedra back now that Candy's gone. Where does Phaedra really belong? That's a good question. Let us know in the chatterization down below. I could tell you where she does belong is on Traders. Okay? Because I just caught the last episode. And when I tell you that's the Phaedra I want to see on Married to Medicine, go watch. All right. So, with that being said, make sure you guys check out the interview with Mariah Huq and Carlos King, part 2. It's available right now. Of course, Married to Medicine airs on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. They could switch that time slot to 8 p.m. To be quite honest with you, I would rather see that first. Just a little note. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe Carlos King and Dr. Heavenly will go live tonight so we can get a better perspective on what happened in the episode, as well as maybe her thoughts on the interview with Mariah. With that being said, look out. I do have an interview coming up today. I have to do that in just about an hour or so. I may put that out today or it may come out tomorrow. Just kind of depends on how the day goes with today. All right. So with that being said, be sure to also clock into my personal channel. It's Richie Skye in real life. New video just dropped this morning. I'm trying to drop videos on there at least 3 to 4 times a week. It's motivation heavy, inspiration heavy, get your life together heavy. If you want some, just a good dose of inspiration in the mornings, this is the perfect place to go. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next video.